Hello everybody, welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Sony Open Data Dive Show. We have a lot to get into. I'm very excited to dig into the weeds of the data. Did a little bit of that this morning over on Twitch, but I want to hear from you all. Have you all looked at the odds boards? When those came out this morning, I was certainly eager to fire off a couple of names at prices that I really liked. So I want to hear from you all. Have you all checked out the odds boards? Is there anything that you like initially at DraftKings or any other site in terms of pricing? Also want to hear from you all that what kind of research have you done? Who are you looking towards early on this week for the Sony? Who are you thinking about playing and fading, and what statistics that you want to see? But very excited to try and continue the winning start to 2023. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is simply the best tool out there. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler and a much better DFS player. Go check them out. It's well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media, Twitter and Instagram. This is where I'm posting research. I will definitely have that up tomorrow. None posted today. Like I said, I was very deep into the research. I found a couple of interesting facts that I want to kind of hammer out. That's what part of tonight will be. So if you want to see the summary of the research that I do, give me a follow over at Twitter and Instagram. If you want to see the full analysis of everything that I do, all of the research and the critique of the previous week, we also did that this morning, critiquing last week's Tournament of Champions mixed condition model lineups and all that stuff. So if you want to see the in-depth review and research that I do, give me a follow over at Twitch. And then finally, as I've mentioned, we are live. Chat is open. Would love to hear from you all. I know the prices for DraftKings are out. I have not looked at those yet. So who are some players that you're looking at? What kind of storylines you think are going to develop? All of that good stuff. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2023 Sony Open. And we're going to start over at WinFinder. As I mentioned yesterday, or last night I should say, wind and weather can be a factor here at YLI. So looking at the forecast 2 or 3 days or so in advance, we see that Thursday actually has the potential for a little bit of wind, which could play some havoc. Again, with the tournament, what's 72 and in between 72, 48, 56 hours or so, 60 hours in advance. We know that this weather forecast absolutely won't change. We can depend on this 100%. But as of right now, Thursday looks to be pretty windy, causing some havoc. But Friday and Saturday here look pristine. Conditions like we had similarly to the first and last round for the Tournament of Champions last week. Mid-70s, very little wind, especially on Friday, or at least forecast for now. But then Sunday looks to be pure havoc, with winds sustained above 20 mile an hour, gusts into the mid-20s. So a very chaotic forecast for the moment. We'll definitely get a better idea come Wednesday what that looks like, but does look like wind could be a factor. So I wanted to make you all aware of that. So we're going to close out WinFinder. We're going to jump straight into Fantasy National, and I have this sorted for 2022, and specifically with wind, or at least I thought I had wind up. We're going to put the wind up right now, and we're going to find out who the best players in the wind were in 2022 to give us a good starting point, starting reference tonight, since wind does look to be a little bit of a factor. So your top wind players in 2022 were Sung J M, Keegan Bradley, Chris Kirk, Gary Woodland, Tom Hoagie, Corey Connors, Matt Kuchar, Scott Piercy, Adam Scott, Billy Horschel, Brian Harmon, and Jordan Spieth. Also note that there are quite a few of the Tournament of Champions participants up here in the top 10 for the wind, and they will be for a lot of the metrics this evening. Confirmed earlier today that 19 of the players that were playing at Kapalua last week are making the trip to Oahu and Waialae Country Club this week, so half of the Tournament of Champions field is playing this week. Which is, again, great for the PGA that these premier players are playing in some of these non-specialized events, really. So, and you'll also notice Kuchar, Matt Kuchar is a former champion here at the Sony. Brian Harmon has had some good success here. Let's see, other players, Russell Henley, winner way back in 2013, but still a former winner here. Also the runner-up, Hideki Matsuyama, who, there he is, top 15, defending champion. So you can see how much wind can play a factor, and the players that are generally good in the wind perform well here. But a few other review or reminders from last night. We'll take the wind filter off. This is a short course, so let's take a look at courses that are less than 7,200 yards. Waialae Country Club specifically is listed on the scorecard at 7,044 yards as a par 70, so it's a medium length par 4, to be honest with you. Bear with me as I clean off my glasses here. It's a medium length par 4, but overall, in terms of PGA Tour standards, it's still a short course. So we're going to look at some short course metrics this evening. So as you see here, your top performers on courses that are short in 2022 were Keegan Bradley, Russell Henley, Brian Harmon, JT Poston, Andrew Putnam, Keith Mitchell, Jordan Spieth, Ben Griffin, Sung J M, David Lingmerth, and Corey Connors. You'll notice that I skipped Patrick Rogers. Before I get too much further in, I have seen 2 field changes as of maybe about an hour or so ago. Patrick Rogers and James Hahn have withdrawn. They are not playing this week. Patrick Rogers and James Hahn. They have been replaced in the field with Dylan Wu and Aaron Baddeley, I believe. So make sure you make a note of that. So no Patrick Rogers, and then if James Hahn pops on some filters, I will do my best to remember that as well. But quite a bit of overlap here in terms of success in wind and success on short courses. Keegan Bradley, Brian Harmon, Jordan Spieth, Sungjae, who was number 1 in terms of success in the wind, is also number 9 when it is short. Corey Connors in the top 10 for both. So a lot of overlap here. Matt Kuchar also very, very prominent when courses are short. So lots and lots of overlap there. But the main filter that I'm going to be using this week, and it's the same one that we used last week for the Tournament of Champions, scoring here is generally easy. It's generally easy. So your top performers when a round was easy in 2022: Tom Kim, Maverick McNeely, Hideki Matsuyama, Russell Henley, Tom Hoagie, JJ Spawn, Andrew Putnam, Will Gordon, Adams Vinson, Brian Harmon, Cam Davis, and Taylor Montgomery. Turns into a top 12 with all of these tied for 9th. You'll notice that I do not have the Tournament of Champions data in this specific time frame tonight. Again, just kind of reviewing a little bit from last night. And if we want to take a look at some Tournament of Champions data, first off, I did that this morning. So if you want to see that, I highly encourage you to give me a follow over at Twitch. as I review the previous week's tournament pretty substantially, and then just trying to keep it consistent across all the filters that I know I want to look at tonight. So yeah, there's still some more overlap between players that are good when it is windy on short courses and now when it's easy. Russell Henley, Tom Hoge, Brian Harmon, I believe, has been in there in the top 10 for all three. Matt Kuchar was in the top 10 for wind. He was in the top 15 to 20 for short. He's in the top 20 for easy. So Matt Kuchar is somebody who has played the Sony very well. Makes a lot of sense considering what we are seeing, at least from his 2022 numbers. A couple other things that to rehash from last night's show. Let's take a look at strokes gained approach. I'm not going to have any filters, just a pure out who has been the best strokes gained approach player, or who was the best strokes gained approach player in 2022. In the field this week, those players are Russell Henley, Tom Kim, Corey Connors, Russell Knox, Tom Hoge, Hideki, Mark Hubbard, Adam Svensson, David Lipsky, and Brendan Steele. And then finally, we're going to go over here to putting. We're definitely going to put on Bermuda. We know we are on Bermuda greens. The more I thought about it today, the more I think I'm going to take a chance and label these as fast. We noted last night that the greens were sped up a little bit last year, and on the tournament fact sheet, the stimp was listed anywhere from 11 to 12. 11 would put it in the average category, which is what the Sony has traditionally been, but 12 would put it into fast. We also remember from last week that Kapalua, there was a pretty big note that Kapalua had a dry year. So if Kapalua has been dry, while I can't confirm this, I would imagine that Oahu has probably been pretty dry as well. And a lot of the players seemed to enjoy the faster greens last year. So my guess is there will be a round, maybe two, maybe all, that are going to be classified as fast. That, again, this is a bit of a limb that I'm going out on, but I see these greens playing to fast this year. So your top performers on fast Bermuda greens in 2022 were Martin Traynor, Tom Kim, Sungjae, Hideki, Satoshi Kodaira, Denny McCarthy, Ben Griffin, Cam Davis, Troy Merritt, Rory Sabatini, and Brendan Todd. Again, a whole lot more overlap here. Tom Kim, Sungjae, Hideki's been up there on quite a few of these kind of overarching filters. Let's see. That might be it for putting and some of these others. Yeah. Really high on Cam Davis. Denny McCarthy, anytime you have putting, you need to think about Denny McCarthy. Surprising to see, or not to see, Billy Horschel here for fast Bermuda, but my guess is that he is more of a slow speed putter. So if we take off the I needed to remove the other filter. Let's keep the Bermuda. Let's remove the fast. Let's just look at Bermuda putting in totality. Your top Bermuda green putters in 2022 with no filter, no Velcro, average, lightning, anything, just pure performance on Bermuda. Those players are Martin Traynor, Brendan Todd, Doc Redmond, Richie Wierenski, Troy Merritt, Denny McCarthy, Maverick McNeely, Taylor Montgomery, Mackenzie Hughes, and Billy Horschel. So Billy Horschel seemingly not enjoying the fast Bermuda, but is a wildly successful putter on Bermuda in general. So the slower these greens are, probably the better for Billy Horschel, or at least statistics-wise, it's what it's looking like. So there you go. Depending on how you see these greens this week, will tell you which of the two rankings you should go with. Again, me personally, I do think that these greens are going to be fast, but if they end up being average, then that's going to be where I'm off this week. So there's a look at some of the recap from last night. Let's dig into some new data and get into some specifics. Interesting note here, or interesting thought that I had earlier today. Let's look at some metrics when specifically a course is short and when a course is easy. So let's look at first when a course is easy. We did this with off the tee in terms of Kapalua, or this was one of the metrics, off the tee when it's easy. Don't think I'm going to have off the tee when it's easy for the Sony. Definitely not going to have anything around the green related this week. Around the green is just suppressed in value. But there might be some line of thinking, some reasoning for using maybe strokes gained approach when it's easy or short, off the tee when it's easy or short, vice versa. So let's just kind of take a look here. Your top performers in strokes gained off the tee when a round was easy in 2022, those players were Sungjae, Keith Mitchell, Ryan Palmer, Kevin Yu, Hayden Buckley, Brent Grant, Trevor Cohn, Kevin Streelman, Maverick McNeely, and Corey Connors. So a lot of success here in terms of YLI. Corey Connors, your strokes gained total leader in the field this week. Ryan Palmer, I believe, is 4 for 4 or even 5 for 5. Has not missed a cut in the past 5 years. Sungjae always seems to play this event fairly well. So there's a look at off the tee when it's easy. I'll keep the easy filter on. Let's look at approach when it's easy. Your top strokes gained approach players when a round is easy. Tom Kim, Russell Henley, Hideki, Corey Connors, Adams Vinson, Mark Hubbard, Tom Hoagie, Satoshi Kodaira, Alex Smalley, and Stefan Jaeger. So a lot of overlap here with just a lot of the metrics in general that we've been looking at. And then if we want to look at short course metrics, we'll take a look at off the tee and approach as well. When a course is short, your top off the tee players: Sungjae, Keith Mitchell, Corey Connors, Russell Henley, Hayden Buckley, Cameron Davis, Chris Kurt, Brendan Steele, Billy Horschel, JT Poston, and Brent Grant. For a second there, I didn't think that I had changed the filter. So seemingly the top, 5 or 6 or so are completely unchanged, or at least the same 6 in maybe a different order from easy and short. Sungjae's up there, Corey Connors is up there, Russell Henley. A lot of these players generally like both when it is short and when it is easy. And then your top strokes gained approach players when on a short course: Russell Henley, Russell Knox, Adams Vinson, Kurt Kitayama, Corey Connors, Jordan Spieth, Keegan Bradley, JT Poston, Lucas Glover, and Nick Taylor. So lots of good stuff there for strokes gained. We're going to move to birdies and bogeys, but I do want to bring up previous leaderboards and see if we can't discern some statistics that might be pointing us in the right direction, if you will. So as you see, last year, a lot of putting up here at the top. In fact, I'm going to highlight, let's do the top 16, just convenient for ties. Off the tee, again, most of them were positive, but you did have some pretty poor performances, so not terribly important. Iron play is going to be pretty paramount. As you can see, only one player was negative, and he was very close to field average. The top, 13 or so putters, or top 13 finishers were all positive in strokes gained putting. So not a whole lot here. The top number in terms of approach, 9.5. You got a 4.4, so already double approach, more important than off the tee. Around the green, 3.9, and then Hideki leading with putting at 7.3. Interesting stuff there, but let's go ahead and move on over to birdies and bogeys. And we talked last night how important birdies or getting birdies on this course are as opposed to avoiding bogeys. This is an easy course, so if you're not getting birdies, you're not gaining ground or essentially keeping up with the rest of the field. And you can see Hideki was your leader in that category at 9.3 last year. Now, Stuart Sink, a very middling finish. He did not avoid bogeys very well, but was very good at gaining the birdies. But otherwise, you've got some pretty strong correlation here. The top 3 finishers, all within the top 6 in terms of birdies gained. Eagles, a little bit like Russell Henley, quite a few eagles. Lucas Glover had quite a few eagles, but eagles aren't necessarily mandatory here, and that's why I am very hesitant to look at eagles by themselves. That's why I'm going to be focusing on birdies or better gained throughout the week. But again, 9.3 versus a 6.9. Now, much more consistent success in terms of the bogeys avoided, but the highest numbers coming in the birdies. If we take a look at previous years as well, we'll see a similar trend to develop. 7.2, not quite the leader. Daniel Berger at Colin Morikawa at 8.2 in 2021. Keith Mitchell at 9.2. But a whole lot of upper leaderboard success there, minus Harry Higgs, who did not avoid bogeys well at all that week. So a 9.2 in the lead there versus a 6.6, and a bit more scattered in terms of correlation. And then finally, 2020 birdies and bogeys. Again, 8.4 from Cam Smith, 8.4 from Webb. Looks like those are the top. Yep. There you go. You want to talk about correlation. I'll even include Ryan Palmer down here. So for the top, 5 finishers were all 6th or better in birdies or gained. You had Michael Gellerman, who made the cut to a middling finish, but it's pretty hard to get more direct than 1st, 3rd, 2nd, 4th, and then 4th being in 6th. Then you had another 4th down here in Kevin Kisner as well. Kisner might be a bit of an outlier. He actually was much more in the bogeys avoided. But 8.4 in birdies, 7.3 from Kisner in bogeys. So, but you look at the top of the leaderboard, more birdies, more birdies, more birdies. Again, Kisner, a bit of an outlier here, but Ryan Palmer birdies, McDowell birdies, etc., etc. So, more important to go get the birdies as opposed to avoiding the bogeys. So I'm going to set this to 2022 and prepare for the next page view. So let's move on to this field, this year's field. We're going to look at birdies or better, and we're going to slice this in a few different ways. Let's first take a look at when a round is easy. So when a round was easy in 2022, your top birdies or better gained players: Ryan Palmer, Tom Kim, Hideki Matsuyama, Taylor Montgomery, Maverick McNeely, Russell Henley, Tom Hoge, Danny Lee, Emiliano Grillo, and Adams Vinson. So again, a lot of overlap here. Ryan Palmer, very, very adept at playing easy courses. He generally plays his best golf when it is easy, as we can see here. And his best putting comes on Bermuda. This is probably why he has been so successful at the Sony. It just lines up well for his skill set. Tom Kim, Hideki. These players, probably no surprise. In the short amount of time that he's been on the PGA Tour, Taylor Montgomery has established himself as being able to get birdies in bunches when it is easy. Maybe not necessarily the most opportunities, but definitely converts his birdies. Russell Henley, Tom Hoge, they've been up there on a whole lot of these metrics as well. Matt Kuchar, Cam Davis just outside the top 10. As you can see, birdies or better when a round is easy, at least in 2022. So lots of good stuff there. Let's take a look at birdies or better when a course is short. Let's see if there's a lot of overlap, if it's different, all of that. So your top birdies or better gained players when a course is short have been Keegan Bradley, David Lingmerth, Ben Griffin, Adams Vinson, Tom Kim, Russell Henley, Stuart Sink, Cam Davis, Taylor Montgomery, and Sam Ryder. So a few new names here, a lot of overlap still. Tom Kim, Adams Vinson, Cam Davis. I mean, he was 12th. He wasn't exactly in the top 10 for birdies or better when it's easy, but very close. And now in the top 10 for when on short courses. Taylor Montgomery, Jordan Spieth lurking just outside the top 10. Maverick McNeely just outside the top 10. So a little bit of overlap here. A little bit of overlap. Let's see. Really, the only two players that are drastically different from their opportunities are David Lingmerth and Stuart Sink. So, okay. All right. But Keegan Bradley, clearly probably the best on short courses. Number one in birdies. And again, we've seen this from previous leaderboards. The Eagles, it's not mandatory, which certainly helps, but it's not mandatory. But number one in birdies and number 4 in bogeys avoided. Number 7 in opportunities when playing a short course. So Keegan really taking advantage of short courses in 2022. And we'll see if that continues on early in 2023, specifically this week at Waialae. So there's a look at some scoring metrics. Let's remove that filter. We'll go back to previous leaderboards, something that I'm pretty interested in. Let's take a look at driving metrics, fairways and greens. Again, this is from last year. We'll highlight the same top 16 and see if we can't gather something here. Distance, we talked about it last night. Sure, there are different ways to play Waialae, so you don't have to have distance. Just pretty mediocre here. Fairways, again, a lot of this top 16 really didn't hit a lot of fairways. Now, good drives gained is pretty high here, but your winner was negative. He wasn't really all that positive in terms of greens either. But there's a pretty big number from Lucas Glover. Let's take a look here. Good drives gained, 8.3. I mean, that looks pretty strong, but considering other courses and some of the numbers and correlation I've seen, this isn't the strongest for good drives. Greens, a 10.7. Yeah, I mean, you have a missed cut all the way up here, high in the greens and regulation gained. I'm not seeing a whole lot, at least from 2022. Check 2021. Let's highlight the top. Yeah, top 13, I guess. Just convenient for ties. Now, in 2021, greens were somewhat a factor. All but one of the top 13 were positive in greens and regulation gained. But again, these greens are pretty big, so I'm not sure how much that is going to play a factor. If these greens were small, I could understand it. An 11 is a big number from Charlie Hoffman, to be fair. Good drives. Again, pretty spotty. 41st, 47th, a missed cut. Not seeing much here. Not seeing much. And then finally we'll take a look at 2020. Again, your winner negative in fairways, negative in good drives, fairly mediocre in greens. I mean, the top was a 10.8, he was a 3.8. Yeah, I don't see a whole lot. I mean, looking at greens, look at this. That's not strong correlation at all. Nobody inside the top 10 was a leader in terms of greens gained. Nobody really in good drives except for Kisner. But I mean, he's surrounded with a lot of middling to even clunker finishes. So I don't see a whole lot in terms of driving here at Waialae. If there is one statistic, I would think it's probably good drives gained, although I could see the argument for greens as well. I just don't see a whole lot here. We'll take a look at when a course is easy. And let's take a quick look at good drives and greens. So your top good drives gained players when it's easy: Aaron Rai, Corey Connors, Ryan Armour, Hayden Buckley, Tom Kim, JJ Spawn, Justin Suh, Russell Henley, Tyler Duncan, and Kevin Yu. Just kind of scanning across here. Russell Henley's in the top 10 in both. JJ Spawn, Tom Kim, Ryan Armour, Corey Connors, and Aaron Rai are all top 10 in both good drives and greens when it's easy. But I mean, looking at these prior leaderboards, I just don't see a whole lot of correlation. But the one of the metrics that I'm really curious about, let's take a strong look at proximity tonight. We tried to look a little bit in the initial research, and some of the numbers were all over the place. Now, according to Fantasy National, the majority of approach shots come between 150 and 175 and 175 to 200, although there is a fair amount of 125 to 150, but these two are the majority of approach shots here. So let's see if that indeed lends itself to upper leaderboard success, or if that's just a happenstance of the course. So looking at just total procs, we highlight the top 16 again, just convenient for ties. You got some pretty big positives here, and the one thing that I am noticing in terms of players that are negative, not really a lot of big numbers with the exception of Keith Mitchell. So last year, for example, Hayden Buckley, negative 12.2, but that's over 4 rounds. So really he was about 3 feet per round under field average. That's pretty darn close to field average. 58 is still not all that bad either. So most of these players up here in the top part of the leaderboard, at least last year, were pretty solid in terms of total proximity. If we get a gauge on, is there a particular range? I gotta say, I don't see anything that jumps off the page immediately. Like the 200 plus has a lot of the upper leaderboard success, but there's not a whole lot of approaches from 200 plus here, especially since there's only 2 par 5s. Let's just kind of get a gauge for some of the numbers in here. The top 94.6. You got a lot of your top 20s in here, but you also have a missed cut, pretty high. Okay. Boy, this one doesn't look very strong at all, although there's a lot of big numbers. Now, Russell Henley was very good at this range last year, but you've got some middling finishes, missed cuts. Okay. And then 175 to 200. Again, looks like a decent amount of cut makers. But you also have your missed cuts in here. Brian Stewart, Nate Lashley. So interesting to see that. Not sure what I'm gleaning other than total procs from last year. Let's take a look at a couple of prior years. We'll look at 2021 and proximity. Highlight the top 13 for ties. A couple of more bigger numbers in terms of total procs, but again, Webb Simpson is essentially field average. Daniel Berger is very close to field average, and these are some fairly big numbers here in the total procs. Looks like Colin Morikawa might have been the best. No, Kevin Kisner and then Morikawa. Okay. Not necessarily a strong correlation from 2022. Now, in terms of upper leaderboard, you've got 150 to 175 and the 200 plus that are dominating in terms of higher numbers. It's not terribly strong. Not terribly strong. Now, this is a good run of cut makers, but nothing that screams that or says that it should be warranting a lot of attention. We'll take a look at 2020, one more year, just to see if we can get some clarity, or if it's just going to be as clear as mud. Top 20 here, just convenient for ties. Again, you've got a couple of bigger numbers down here in terms of total procs, but -9 again over 4 rounds, -1/10 across 4 rounds. That's field average. Now 125 to 150 here, there's a lot of green from 2020. The 150 to 175 is not anything at all from 2020 at all. Okay, so we got some really upper end leaderboard success here in the 175 to 200, and a decent run of cut makers after the missed cut from Chris Baker. So that's about the strongest correlation I've seen so far across these 3 years. Again, 150 to 175, well, there's just nothing. There's just nothing. No player inside the top 20 for quite a while in the 150 to 175. I mean, you got a decent, okay. You got a third, a middling from Michael Gellerman, and then a good run of, top 15s and or damn near top 20. So, okay. 125 to 150 seems like it's something, because I believe 2022 was something similar to that in the 125 to 150. Yeah, I mean, you had a decent run of top 20s here, a middling finish from Grayson Sigg, miscut, but a third, first, and a 12th. Interesting to see 125 to 150 might be something, even though it doesn't have, it is slightly more than the average tour event, but doesn't come close in terms of the amount of ranges here, or the amount of approach shots from these other ranges. So I'd be curious to hear from you. Put it in chat or in the comments. Is there a proximity that you're focusing on? But I am seeing this as a total procs, maybe 175 to 200. But that 125 to 150 was pretty darn strong, I got to admit. Pretty darn strong for 2 out of those 3 years. So I'm going to take the filters off. I just want to look at just proximity, and it's going to be a lot of data, yes, but remember, we don't always get proximity data. So let me click on Paul Haley here. We don't always get proximity data, especially in the fall, just because there's no shot link. For example, at the Mayakoba in Mexico, there's no shot link. The RSM, 1 round guaranteed won't have shot link since it's a 2-course rota. If a player played the Zozo, that doesn't have shot link. So I do want to grab all of 2022 just to make sure players have enough data in here. So your top total procs players in 2022 with no filters, just simply who are your best total proximity players. Russell Knox, Ryan Armour, Lucas Glover, Corey Connors, Kevin Streelman, Russell Henley, Tom Hoge, Adam Scott, Brian Harmon, and Gary Woodland. And then if we scan across here, especially at the main three, I don't think I'll be able just to highlight those three, unfortunately, but these three here, from 125 to 200 essentially, scanning across, Lucas Glover, pretty darn good at all three. Russell Henley, very, very good, which probably explains a lot since he is, a former winner here. He came in second last year. He generally plays really well at the Sony. Tom Hoge, another player who has performed well here at YLI, very good at those three ranges. Adam Scott, good at the three ranges. Tom Kim, very, very good at all three ranges as well, including being number one from 150 to 175. Very good at the short, 25th, which is still really darn good when you consider this is now a full field event of 149 players. So, inside the top 16% in terms of proximity 175 to 200. So 25th is nothing to scoff at in that regard. So very good. JJ Spawn, good at all three as well. Smotherman, probably an honorable mention, sneaking in just inside the top 40 for all for all three. And Zach Blair, maybe somebody to keep an eye on, especially if you are wanting to focus on these specific links of proximities. He's top 40 in all. And only because I saw a couple more down here out of the corner of my eye, Siwoo Kim and Nate Lashley, also top 40 in all three of those lengths. So my guess is I'm going to be focusing on total procs. Perhaps we'll have a clearer view when we go to Microsoft Excel. Maybe this 125 to 150 will stand out. But since I'm getting mixed results here, probably just going to stick with total procs. But again, would be curious to hear from you all what you all think. So put it in the chat or in the comments. Par 3 efficiency. This one's going to be pretty easy. If there's a range, it's going to be the 175 to 200, but they're just not all that important here. They just aren't. Now, yes, last year, the top, few performers in par 3s were pretty darn good. A 2.3, but remember, there is no hole that measures to this on the scorecard. So this is that one par 3 that gets moved around. Not sure I want to depend on one hole. So 2.3 is the max there, 3.8, and then a 2.3. So clearly the highest number is here, but not a lot of correlation. So a decent amount of success here from these players, but not a lot in terms of the overall. 2021 par 3 efficiency. Again, you got a second and a first, but it's surrounded by middling to clunker finishes. But you see 4.2, I almost said 3.2. You got a 4.2 there. The highest over here is a 3.3. So still slightly favoring the 175 to 200. And then 2020, more of the same, but we'll show you for your benefit. 4.7 being the highest in terms of par 3s, and the majority of that coming again in the 175 to 200 because they didn't even move the par 3s into the 200 to 225 that year. So highest number 3.7, 4.2. It's going to be the 175 to 200s if there is a particular range. I just don't see par 3s being a big factor overall. But now I will bring this back or narrow this in down to the fall, only because want to narrow this in on a when I'm looking at a broad broad statistic like par threes, and we have all of the information like shot. Even though there's no shot link at some of these courses, we still get the par three data. It's okay to look at fall or just the fall statistics. So from the Fortinet, or September 13th, middle of September forward, your top par 3 performers have been Chesson Hadley, Tom Kim, Nick Taylor, Aaron Baddeley, Danny Lee, Grayson Sigg, Keegan Bradley, Nick Hardy, Bryce Garnett, and Joseph Bramlett. Again, skipping Patrick Rogers, he has withdrawn. And scanning across, looking at the 175 to 200, Tom Kim, number 1 in both 175 to 200 and in total par 3s. Not a math guy. Not sure you can do better than first and first. If you can, let me know. Would be happy to hear it. But I don't think you can. So first and first, well, he's withdrawn. Danny Lee, top 10 in both. Honorable mention to KH Lee, 14th in total par 3s, 5th at the most important length here at YLI. Aaron Baddeley is an honorable mention, 17th in the specific length of par 3s, but 4th in total. Nick Taylor, good at the short par 3s. Chesson Hadley, good at the short par 3s. Harris English, good at the short par 3s. So there's some names to keep an eye out for if looking at a lot of par 3 metrics. But we get to the most important part for YLI, and that's par 4s. We saw this last night in the initial research over at Microsoft Excel, everywhere. I mean, just the sheer amount of numbers. Just a quick comparison. Par 3s, the highest number was a 4.3, finishing second. That same player has an 8, and there are 10s around him. It's just, double, triple the importance. 10s being the highest, and look at that correlation. That is massive in terms of direct correlation. In terms of par 4s, looking here, there are 2 from this range, 5 and 5, at least on the scorecard. So you have a 4.3, 7.3, 5.2. Now, in terms of upper leaderboard success, that's pretty strong once you get to Cameron Young. Pretty darn strong. Grayson Sigg, the outlier, and he still made the cut, but still pretty darn strong. 350 to 4, not nearly as much. So quite clearly, it looked like the 400, 450, 450 to 5 was pretty strong as well, which makes a lot of sense. 10 of the 12 par 4s here at YLI fall between these two ranges, so makes a lot of sense. Again, looking at par 4s, you see the short ones didn't matter at all in 2021. If we sort 9s, 7s, 6s, I mean, still, anyone who had a 6 in par 4s, yes, Brendan Todd did have a middling finish. Everyone other than him was a top 25. So, again, stressing the importance of par 4s. A 6.5 there and a 4.7. So, again, the second straight year that 400 to 450 is outweighing the others. And pretty darn strong correlation. I mean, stronger than that. Hopefully you can tell and see that from just the numbers here by their finishing position. 400 to 450, much stronger than 450 to 5. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to save time. 2020 is the same. So, your top performers from the middle of September or the start of the PGA Tour season forward. Your top par 4 performers have been Brian Harmon, Taylor Montgomery, J.J. Spawn, Tom Hoagie, Maverick McNeely, Denny McCarthy, Andrew Putnam, Ben Taylor, Mackenzie Hughes, and Tom Kim. Scanning across here, Brian Harmon, just fantastic at all 3 of the links here at YLI, particularly the 2. Taylor Montgomery, J.J. Spawn's fine, top 22nd, again out of 149 is good. Tom Hoagie, good. Andrew Putnam, top 20 in both. Ben Taylor, top 20 in both. Grayson Sigg, honorable mention, just outside the top 25 from 450 to 5. Kurt Kitayama, top 10 in both. So there's some names for you to keep an eye on. A little bit further down here, Sam Ryder, top 20 in both. Satoshi Kodaira, top 25 in both. As well as being good in totality on par 4s. So lots of emphasis this week on par 4s and probably the 400 to 450. And then finally, we'll take a very quick look at par 5 efficiency, as we still need to go to Microsoft Excel. But par 5 efficiencies are going to be mitigated in importance. There's only 2 here. A 3.4 is the highest, even in terms of total par 5. It's not weighing as much as the par 3s, and all of it seemingly coming in the 500 to 550. You got 1.2 here and a 3.2 here. But again, when you sort on the leaderboard, just not a whole lot here. 2021 par 5s, again, fine. I mean, it's you gotta play them well, I suppose, but they're not extremely important. And if there is one particular par 5, it's the 500 to 550, at least on the scorecard, the one that measures to that. The top here is a 4.2 versus what was this year's par 3, 4.8, so still not equaling the par 3s. So your top par 5 performers since the beginning of the PGA Tour season have been, Kyle Westmoreland, Stephen Yeager, Eric Cole, Alex Smalley, Davis Thompson, Sung Jae, Hideki Matsuyama, Keith Mitchell, Taylor Montgomery, and Charlie Hoffman. And then quite a few of these players are also very, very good at the 500 to 550, minus Hideki and minus Charlie Hoffman. So there you go. There's a quick look at the par 5s as well. I'm going to be putting a whole lot of my focus on the par 4s. Birdies are better. Probably a little bit of proximity, although hopefully Microsoft Excel will clear some of that up here very shortly. So that's going to do it for the Fantasy National portion. Let's move on over to Microsoft Excel, shall we? And the first thing I'm going to do, let's look at the comparison course. Again, this is comparing YLI to all of the other courses. This is the detail. So we saw this last night again. I'll zoom in a little bit for you all. Here at YLI, approach 7% more important, putting 5% more important. In terms of driving, again, distance doesn't matter. Good drives gained is under course average. Greens just to the right of your screen here, right at course average, so not seeing a lot there. However, birdies or better. Yes, that is a very big number from Eagles, but the birdies have a pretty low outlier that is dragging that number down. So if you remove this very low outlier, that number is going to rise pretty substantially, up to 14.2%. So we're going to be looking at birdies or better. Par 3s, again, in totality, they're not all that important, but the 175 to 200s are. So if I do anything with par 3s, probably going to be 175 to 200. We move on over to the par 4s, and just as I suspected, 400 to 450, completely outweighing the other ranges. Although the 450 to 500 are still more important than other courses, and par fours in total are, 400 450 just carries such a massive amount of weight here. Just such a massive amount of weight. If we look at the specifics of it, we've got a 2.51 and a 1.53, so almost one full shot more important, 400 to 450 than the 450 to 500s. Almost one full shot. So yeah, definitely going to be looking at 400 450s this week in my mixed condition model. Par fives, again, in total, not all that important. And really the 500 to 550s aren't all that important either. There's not a lot to do with the par fives 0 to 500 because not every course has a 0 to 500 yard par 5. Sorry. So I'm not sure how much, if anything, I'm going to put into these par 5s. They just aren't all that important. Just some very, very minuscule numbers. There's only 2 par 5s. They're generally pretty gettable, so everybody's generally taking advantage of them. Not seeing a whole lot with par 5s, to be honest with you. What I'm really curious about are these proximities, and we've seen a few of these have some pretty big numbers. Prox total, 28% more important. 125 to 150, very important. But all 3 of these ranges are showing that they are more important than the average full field course. But 125 to 150 and the 175 to 200 especially so. So I know I'm going to be using some amount of prox total, but I have a feeling that I might be doing some 125 to 150, even though the majority of the approach shots come from these 2 ranges. I don't know. I've just got a gut feeling here on that one. So there's a look at Waialae compared to other courses. Let's take a quick look at previous performance here at Waialae from players that are in the field this week. Yeah, we'll just leave it as it is. Your top strokes gained approach players historically here at Waialae. What largest to smallest? Lucas Glover, he's only played it 1 time. Hideki played it well, average of a 21st. He's your defending champion. Ches Reavie averages a 43rd finish, but he is 3 for 4. Has been very good with the irons here. Keegan Bradley, Russell Knox, Scott Piercy has been very good here. Corey Connors, your strokes gained total leader. Interesting to see Tom Hoge. He is 3 for 5. However, his 2 cuts made were a top 15 and a top 5. So he is all or nothing here at Waialae. So interesting on Tom Hoge. Ryan Armour, 4 for 5 here at Waialae. There's Ryan Palmer, who I mentioned earlier in the show. Oh, it's just getting cut off. Ryan Palmer, 4 for 4, average finish inside the top 30. He's been pretty balanced across. Okay, very interesting. Let's take a look at birdies gained. And we'll, of course, look at eagles with it, but I don't want to look at eagles by themselves. So we'll just take a look at birdies gained and then get a feel for birdies or better combined. So Adams Vincent in 2 attempts has been very good with the birdies. Webb Simpson, Corey Connors, Brendan Steele also having a fair amount of eagles in his 3 years. Ryan Palmer, Stuart Sink, 4 for 4 with an average finish of a 27th, very strong. Maverick McNeely, although he's only played it 1 time, he had a lot of eagles. Hideki, quite a few eagles and birdies, so he's been doing it with birdies or better. Patton Kizzire is also a former champion here in 2017, doing it with birdies or better gained. All right. Couple more here. Let's take a look at par 4s and proximities. So I'll just sort on par 4s, and we'll scroll across to the 400 to 450. Okay. Webb Simpson, Corey Connors, Stuart Sink, these players that are traditionally playing the Sony Open extremely well. Look at these humongous numbers in strokes gained par 4. Russell Knox, Hideki, Patton Kazire, Matt Kuchar, a former champion here. Chris Kirk's played this event well, Keith Mitchell. So you can see just the direct correlation of high performance or strong performance in par 4s and finishes. If we look at 400, 450, I mean, you got one player that's negative in Lucas Glover, but then the next negative is down here to Emiliano Grillo. So a whole lot of success here. In fact, let's just go to, we'll say Ryan Armour, because he's averaging a 3.0. So the average here at 400, 450 is a 1.7 compared to a 1.1, and then a 0.6. So yeah, even more so, 400, 450 is the emphasis. Finally, let's take a look at some proximity and particular proximities and your leaders historically here. All right. Again, only one tournament, so I don't want to put too much weight into it, but Lucas Glover, his one time, was very good at really all of the proximities. There's Ches Reavie, Keegan Bradley, Hideki, Ryan Armour, Ryan Palmer. Emiliano Grillo has played this event fairly well, and he's doing it at the longer approaches, lengths of approaches, I should say. Kyle Stanley, okay, 3 for 5. Patton Desire, 4 for 5. He is doing it kind of a little bit of everywhere. Zach Johnson, Webb Simpson, doing it mainly with the 125 to 150 and the 200 plus, although he is not a long hitter, so he probably leaves himself more 200 plus approaches than the average player. Interesting. The last thing I want to do with this, let's just sort this back on the finish, best finishes, and then get a feel for what some of these numbers look like. So the players that have played this the best, I'll just keep the players that have only played it one time in here. You see Lucas Glover. There's a lot of pretty solid green in terms of strokes gained approach. A lot of heavy green and putting to be expected. Oh my, look at this. Look at all the green and the birdies gained. So if we go down to Adam Scott, these are just players that are averaging a top 30 or better. Average of a 2.7 there versus a 1.8. So 50% more important birdies gained than bogeys avoided. Par 4s, yeah, just heavy green. Interesting to see the 450 to 500 are kind of close here, I would think. That's a 1.1. That's a 0.9, so they actually do overtake them. That's still 400, 450 for me, but a lot of emphasis on par 4s if I haven't stressed it enough. Finally, I do want to look at proximity for these players. Again, let's just kind of go down to the players who have averaged a top 30. That is an average of 3.9. That's not very high. 4.9 and a negative 1. So, okay, I don't know if that helps much. 81.8. So total procs might be it. Might be what we're wanting to look at. So there's that for you. I'll leave that up for a second. We're running a little bit over time, but the last thing I do want to show you all is my mixed condition model from last year, and we'll get a gauge and see how successful or not it was and what changes we can make to it. You can see my number 1 and number 3 player missed the cut, so that's not off to a promising start. Webb Simpson was 61st, although did not know at the time he was dealing with some injuries. Makes some sense now. The winner was 19th in my ranking, so that's not terrible. Second was in my top 8. Third, overall, I would say this is a very middling mixed condition model in terms of results. Quite a few missed cuts up here, being saved by the fact that it was very, very top heavy. Again, the winner was in my top 20. I had the second place finisher up there, the third place finisher up there. Very middling in terms of success by overall result. 20% par 4s, I'm feeling like par 4s are going to be pretty darn important, that's for sure. Last year I focused on average Bermuda. Made sense because every single round had been average speed Bermuda greens. Makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking I might put that to fast this year. 15% might be a bit of a bit too heavy. I'm not sure. Greens, I don't see it this year. I really don't. I don't see it. Now, I did focus on the 175 to 200s. I focused on the 400 to 450 par 4s. I did look at 500 to 550 par 5s. No other par 5s at all. Okay. 10% might be a bit heavy. Maybe 5%. I think strokes gained approach needs to be increased. Certainly. I only had that at 10%. At 10%, birdies are better when it's easy. Again, makes a lot of sense. And then finally, we know we're going to get 5% back. I'm not doing anything in terms of strokes gained total in my mixed condition models this year. But let's take a quick sort on on the results and see what kind of correlation was strong. Again, we'll just do the top. Let's do the top 19 here. So average of 60, that's not very strong. The putting was not strong at all. Not strong at all. That's a 70. Greens, 51.5. Okay. Par 3s, these players were atrocious coming into the week at the specific length of par 3s. That didn't deter them from performing well. Specifically the par 4s, other than these 3, was pretty strong. This is an average of 59, so so it's really, really top heavy. These 3 and these 3 are really dragging down that number. Par 5s, again, pretty high number there in the 60s. I wonder, strokes gained total easy. How close was this? How good was this? This is a 62, not too much. So a very middling mixed condition model, and yet some of the same metrics that I'm looking at this year. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. All right, in the comments, let me know. Are you looking at anything in particular for proximity? Are you looking at any player or style of player? Do you think someone from Kapalua is going to win? I will have some research out tomorrow. Might have put something out earlier today. I can't remember. But if I haven't, I'll definitely put something out tomorrow. But I will leave you off with the specific performance of players at Waialae this week. But let me know in the comments what you are looking for in terms of statistics. Do you think there's a statistic that I'm looking at that you don't think needs to, or vice versa? Have you looked at the odds boards? Have you put in any wagers? I certainly fired off a couple today when the odds came out. Would be curious to hear of any wagers that you all have. But thanks for tuning in and watching and listening, supporting the channel, whether that's liking the videos, subscribing, commenting. It's always appreciated. I love what I do and wouldn't be able to do it without you and without Fantasy National. So for all of the wagers that you've made so far this week for the Sony Open, for any of the wagers you're thinking about making this week at the Sony Open, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.